The Maine Supreme Court has ruled what we've been saying for a long time now, that ranked choice voting is in fact unconstitutional. Maine Democrats, however, are now proposing that we alter the Maine Constitution in order to accommodate this legislation. Something, though, that we want to emphasize is that the Constitution isn't something you just change so that you can get your way. This past week, President Trump unveiled his taxpayer-first budget. The budget seeks to balance over time while cutting unnecessary government spending and increasing funding for the military and our veterans. Check out these clips of Trump's budget director, Mick Mulvaney.
Picked it up on Friday, the new Foundation for American Greatness. I spent most of the weekend, as you can imagine, reading it. And as I went through it, it struck me that we could have come up with a different title. And the title could have been The Taxpayer First Budget. Because the first time, in my memory at least, this is a budget that was written from the perspective of the people who actually pay for the government. And we went line by line through what this government does and asked ourselves, can we justify this to the folks who are actually paying for it? If I'm going to take money from Mr. Diaz-Balart in taxes and I'm going to spend it on a program, can I justify to him actually spending that money? If I'm going to take money from you, Ms. Schakowsky, and do the same thing, can I justify it to you? Can I look you in the eye and say, I need to take this money from you in order to give it to a disabled veteran? And I think that I can. I'm not sure I could look at Mr. Woodall and say, Mr. Woodall, I need to take some of your money so that I can give it to a program that is completely ineffective, doesn't help anybody, and is rife with waste, fraud, and abuse. And that's the perspective that we brought to this budget from the very beginning. And maybe that's what's new about the new Foundation for American Greatness budget. The other thing that's new, by the way, is that it does balance. And for those of you who've been here for a long time, you know that it's been a long time since the President's budget has balanced. It certainly hasn't happened since I arrived in Washington, D.C. in 2010. Someone mentioned on the news today this is a moral document, and it is. And here's the moral side of it. If I take money from you and I have no intention of ever giving it back, that is not debt, that is theft. If I take money from you with an intention to pay it back, and I can show you how I intend to pay it back, that is debt. And what we've been doing for too long, both parties, by the way, in this city, have been taking money from people without laying out a plan for how we're ever going to pay it back.
This past week, Congressman Poliquin went on WABI to talk about the American Health Care Act and other current issues. Check out these highlights.
About this bill that's an improvement over the Affordable Care Act, in your opinion, and especially for people here in Maine?
It's so important that we recognize the fact that Obamacare is failing. We have families that are no longer able to afford health insurance because their premiums and deductibles are going through the roof. So the bill that I voted on keeps what works. For example, nobody can be denied health insurance coverage. Everyone with a pre-existing condition will be covered. And you are guaranteed the ability to renew your policy once you have it. But at the same time, we need to fix the parts that are broken. For example, the onerous taxes that are included in Obamacare that hurt the middle class and hurt job creation. We also need to make sure that we're not forcing people to buy health insurance. Well, I advocated very strongly with the President and the Vice President several times at the White House to make sure our folks that live in rural areas and those at the lower end of our wage scale are protected. What we are changing is we're going to ask them to work if they're able to work and don't have any kids. Or we're going to ask them to do job training or community service in order to receive these medical welfare benefits.
Maine GOP is excited to announce that Senator Susan Collins will be joining us at our fundraiser on May 31st with Curt Schilling. Tickets are going fast, and this event is sure to be a home run, so don't miss out. As you know, President Trump is on a whirlwind trip overseas. So far, he's been to Saudi Arabia, Israel, the Vatican, and now he's in Brussels wrapping everything up. The trip is getting great press, and what's most important is that America is back on the world stage. Maine First Media recently broke a story about Maine People's Alliance activist Douglas Lane. Mr. Lane, as it turns out, has 2 counts of gross sexual assault on a child under the age of 14 on his record. Mr. Lane has been seen in photos at events such as rallies for Planned Parenthood and standing on stage behind Lewiston mayoral candidate Ben Chin. This story has just started to go national, and perhaps what's even more disturbing than the fact that the Maine People's Alliance had a pedophile working for them is the fact that Mr. Lane has been allowed to fly under the radar due to some old code in Maine law. Mr. Lane is not supposed to have contact with children, and he's not supposed to go to places like parks and schools, but with his activism for the Maine People's Alliance, we don't know who he's had contact with or where he has gone. This is just yet another scandal for the Maine People's Alliance in their long history of unsavory activists. This past week, it was announced that Commissioner Mary Mayhew will be leaving her post at DHHS. Maine GOP would like to extend a hearty thank you to Commissioner Mayhew for her work promoting groundbreaking welfare reform here in the state of Maine. Thank you for watching this episode of News You Can Trust. Be sure to share it with your friends on social media. For more videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you'd like to see more information on what we're doing at the party, go to MaineGOP.com. We know we're not reporters, but you can trust us.